Hello and welcome to Reaper's Channel, a podcast dedicated to talking about real-life serial killers and their portrayal in media. I am your host, Gabriela Gonzalez, and this week's episode will be focused on the Netflix movie Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. It focuses on Ted Bundy, and it's told from the perspective of his longtime girlfriend, Elizabeth Kupfer, who refused to believe the truth about him for years.
Do you remember the night we met?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been witness to the unspeakable horrors of the defendant's heinous crimes. You have seen ghastly injuries, smashed-in faces, broken jaws.
Will the defendant please rise?
For years, I've carried this guilt that I'm to blame for everything. If only I hadn't trusted you.
Promise you'll never leave me, Liz.
It's about another missing girl, isn't it? Ted, did you do it?
No.
We've got a very disturbed, sick individual.
You'll be the first nationally televised trial in history.
You look nice, partner.
I'm disguised as an attorney today.
I get very scared, but, he's also really dreamy.
There are things you don't know that will shock you beyond your worst nightmares.
It's all a lie.
It is a capital murder case, and you are skating on thin ice.
This is about catching a monster.
I wish I could take it all back. What about me? I love you. Get out!
The killings were extremely wicked, shockingly evil, vile.
Did you do these things, Ted?
This is all gonna end.
It's only gonna end with the truth.
Just like with the previous episode, I will be giving a brief, or at least summarized version of what the criminal has done, and or is at least famous for. Theodore Robert Bundy, more known as Ted Bundy, was born on November 24th, 1946 in Burlington, Vermont. Bundy had a difficult childhood. He had a strained relationship with his stepfather, and his shyness made him a frequent target of bullying. Later, however, his intelligence and social skills enabled him to enjoy a successful college career, and he developed a series of apparently normal emotional relationships with women. Despite his apparent stability, he sexually assaulted and killed several young women in Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, and Florida between the years 1974 and 1978. Although he would ultimately confess to only 28 of the murders, some estimated that he is responsible for possibly hundreds of deaths. Following a well-publicized trial, he was sentenced to death in 1979 for the murder of 2 college students. In the following year, he was again sentenced to death, this time for the rape and murder of a 12-year-old girl. Bundy was executed in Florida's electric chair in 1989. Despite the appalling nature of his crimes, Bundy became something of a celebrity, particularly following his escape of custody in Colorado in 1977. During his trial, his charm and intelligence drew a significant amount of public attention. His case inspired a series of popular novels and films devoted to serial murder. It also galvanized feminist criminologists who contended that the popular media had transformed Bundy into a romantic figure. in the new Netflix original movie, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, there was a spark of controversy that occurred when the actor for Ted Bundy was announced. The actor that plays Ted is well-known actor Zac Efron. Now, the controversy was that Zac Efron was too attractive to play Ted Bundy, which would lead to people romanticizing the serial killer. Which is odd because Ted Bundy has already been romanticized by women in his decade. Part of his charm and the reason why he was able to lure so many women was because they found him attractive. That and how he pretended to be injured or like his large amount of costumes that led women to trust him. That was part of his charm. That was part of his manipulation to get women to get in his car to go with him so that he could ultimately slaughter them. The reason I bring this up is because since this podcast is about serial killers in media, the way Zac Efron portrays Ted Bundy, although being viewed as controversial, is rather accurate. And he even shares certain facial features with Bundy. They are not extremely identical, but it is a good portrayal of the character. Even so, Zac Efron admitted it in an interview that he was actually afraid of playing Bundy, as I'll show right now.
I know how passionate you are when it comes to deciding your projects, the research that goes into this. Where did you start with Ted Bundy?
That's a great question. It was definitely a long process to get my mind around if I wanted to play a guy like Ted Bundy. So it was a difficult process. Once I found out about him and it put me off a little more, I was even more scared. And then I talked to the director, Joe Berlinger, and he told me about his version of the film, or his idea of the story, which was much more about the psyche of Ted Bundy and told through the perspective of Liz, his longtime girlfriend who knew him the most. And at that point, I thought maybe there's something interesting here and something that could be powerful.
Zac Efron is mostly known for his role as Troy Bolton in the High School Musical films, which he has since then distanced himself from, even rejecting to be in a reunion or a possible sequel to the films. He is also well known for a couple other films such as Charlie St. Cloud and 17 Again. Then he started doing more adult comedy movies such as Neighbors and Dirty Grandpa, as well as some voice acting roles, with his most predominant voice acting role being in the film The Lorax, playing the character who is coincidentally named Ted. Off the bat with Efron's history in raunchy comedies or family-oriented films, Zac Efron doesn't seem like the type who would be in a serious and even horrific film with the role of an actual serial killer. But he did his job quite well. Exceptional, even. Despite the film's overall positive reviews, there have been a large number of critiques that are actually enraged by how Bundy is portrayed. Mostly disappointed by some glossovers in the real story. Mostly the murders of his victims. But the thing is, the movie isn't told from Ted's perspective. It's told from his girlfriend's, Elizabeth. We only know as much about Ted as she does. Maybe even less. The film only has us see what she sees, as well as a few fragments of important information. You see, this movie isn't supposed to romanticize Bundy as many people think, due to the lack of actual violence that we are seeing around the film. Again, we, the audience, are shown the perspective of Elizabeth Kolfer. And she didn't know about most of the killings when she was with Ted. This isn't a story solely about Bundy. This is a story about Elizabeth's relationship with Bundy. And a lot of viewers don't seem to truly understand that. They expect to see a disgusting shell of a man that we are supposed to hate and even be somewhat terrified of. But we only see that side of him until the end of the movie. In the very last meeting of Liz and Ted.
Well, it's the darling of this year's Sundance Film Festival, the new Ted Bundy biopic titled Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. And while film buyers and executives really love Zac Efron's portrayal of the famous serial killer, some think that the portrayal is glamorizing one of the most sinister and evil men in American history, making him just a bit too likable. Here's a look.
I want to come see you.
I was really hoping you'd say that.
This case is about catching a monster.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am that innocent suspect.
You are skating on thin ice, partner.
The media has convicted Ted before he's had his day in court.
I'm gagged, and you're not.
I wonder whether he did it or not.
I'm more popular than Disney World.
Heck of a trailer there. Joining us to talk about it, Dr. Gail Saltz, psychiatrist. Gail, always good to see you. So what do you say to those people who say, wait a minute, heartthrob Zac Efron should not be playing Ted Bundy? Your thoughts?
The reality is that we have been glamorizing serial killers for millennia, really. I mean, if you think back to Jack the Ripper, the fascination with and glamorization of serial killers is not new. This is not a departure. It's a complicated psychology of why we're so fascinated. And it does leave it to people to understand that there's a big difference between an actual serial killer and the movie form that we create. That Ted Bundy was not Hannibal Lecter. Those are fictional people, and to some degree, this is creating a fictionalized Ted Bundy.
Back in his time, and even to this very day, many people, more specifically women, are extremely drawn to Bundy, finding him attractive and charismatic, and with his crimes, some women are even more attached, thinking that they could have changed him. This is actually an unhealthy and toxic mentality that a lot of true crime fans are guilty of, thinking that they can change a person who has killed so many people just by themselves. And Ted Bundy's far from an exception. So, knowing this, why would so many people be upset with Bundy being portrayed by an attractive actor? It's actually quite hypocritical, and people will automatically assume that just because a person has done something wrong means that they are not allowed to have any sort of positive qualities in them, even if they're only physical. Again, Bundy was described as charismatic and even attractive. So, why would an actor like Zac Efron be considered as an inappropriate fit, that somehow he's going to romanticize Bundy as a person just because of his physical features? Because of his reputation as a teenage heartthrob. Aren't we going for more realism? That's it for this week's episode of Reaper's Channel. Next week we'll be breaking down a song and discussing the crimes referenced in it.